Ladies and gentlemen, Dzień dobry dzieci. It is the Flurza Experience, episode number 19. My name is Flake. I'm joined here by my very good friend, my brat from another mat, I guess. Does that even work?
No.
No?
Mama is in Polish.
Mama
like
matka? Is matka something?
Matka, yeah.
Okay, so my bratka from another matka. The cycling fanatic himself, Mr. Pavel Burza. How are you?
Hello, Flake. Thank you for, and always is an awesome introduction. I am fine. I am great. We're just after the 10.6 update. And it's been a good week, and I'm excited to get into the topics that we have for today. But you say this is episode 19. That means that we're soon gonna, hit the big 2-0. And I feel like where have these episodes kind of like flown through already? That we're in 20 episodes. I haven't felt like we've done so many already.
Well, it definitely doesn't seem like we've done 20, because keep in mind, I did 10 with Shinmiri prior to this, right? Like 10, almost 10 and a half episodes before this. So this is like almost my 30th, if not 29th or 30th episode, because I think that I've got like a 10.5 with Shinmiri. The 10.5 is where we announced that Shinmiri is forsaking us for the sake of, raising little Leo. Yeah, which Shinmiri always updates me. We always talk. We talk like once a week or every couple of weeks. We chat. I love him to death. He's still my wingman. He's still my Gwent wingman, which is great. I say that now because I watched Top Gun. So he's I
heard it's a good movie.
Oh my god. I know that we talk about movies here. We even did like a whole Batman episode almost. But Top Gun is the epitome of what a theater movie should be, in my opinion. It's got the movie star, it's got the tension, the action, the emotion. Now, the one thing is that it's like you watch and you're like, okay, there's a lot of predictable elements to it, but that doesn't necessarily take away from the satisfaction of the payoffs for those predictable things. Like they're setting up the dominoes, and you're like, okay, you hit the first domino, obviously. Unless some catastrophe occurs, the last one's going to fall, and you know exactly what's going to happen. But as you're watching it happen, you're like, oh, it's still so satisfying. The problem is that Tom Cruise is a colossal POS. He's a terrible human being in real life, but it pains me so deeply that every movie he produces in the past, God knows how long, has been so good, and I hate that, like.
It comes with the experience, dude. I think it comes with the experience. I mean, he's done so many movies already that he knows what people going, to the cinema, what they want to see, pretty much. And I think it just comes from that. And yeah, I've also heard only good things about it, which is like, it's not like Morbius, which people are just, throwing rocks at, or making a meme out of.
The best ever. the Morbius coming back, being like, let's ride this meme train, and people are like, no, I don't think you get what we're doing here.
It's Morbin time.
I know nothing about this stuff. I'm very much like, there's so many silly memes and copy pastas and stuff that kind of fly by, and I'm like, I drive through them with the windows up. I don't roll the windows down to catch a whiff of whatever the hell people
I always take it all in. I love new memes. I love them. And if I forget about them, I have Ryan on my side who will be like constantly sending me those things and sharing it and talking about it when we're in meetings and stuff like that. So I pretty much always, need to know what's up.
Not here. No, I don't do that garbage. Well, I call it garbage. I mean, I don't do that stuff mainly because like because it changes so fast.
Man.
I'm a busy man. Yeah. But, so Top Gun, go see Top Gun because it was so fun. And it's definitely a movie that I absolutely can be sure that had I seen it in my living room versus in the theater, I would have been like, I wish I saw this in theaters, because it's.
Thank you. You convinced me to go now.
Okay.
That's all I wanted. That's all I wanted.
Yeah. Like Tom Cruise puts the work in. Like, he's a great actor. He's a great presence, very charismatic, and he does a lot of his own stunts. Like, the guy puts the work in, so I respect that aspect of him. But like his whole Scientology bullshit, like the guy's a stain on humanity, and it's unfortunate what he perpetrates in real life. But if you're shoving planes at high speed in front of my face, I'm going to sit there. I love aviation. I love airplanes. I love dogfights. Like that's what hooked me with Star
Nice.
Wars. What hooked me with Star Wars wasn't the Force. It wasn't lightsabers. It
Oh
was
wow.
it was X-wings fighting TIE fighters. That
Yeah, that was actually cool.
like the space battles are what hooked me. 100%.
Yeah.
That's why, like, to
Yeah,
me,
that's why you love Han Solo and the Millennium Falcon so much.
yeah, man, like just the dude and his ride going pew
Yeah.
pew, blasting through asteroids, saying
Yeah.
suck it, you know? I guess that's what he's saying.
Flying,
I would imagine
flying
Chewbacca.
through space.
Yeah.
Like,
So
oh.
that's why one of the most anticipated movies I think in my entire life that I've ever been so more excited to see. I don't know where it's at in production now, but they announced a few years ago, I think 2 years ago, that they're coming out with a Rogue Squadron movie, and Rogue Squadron to me is like I read all the books like as a kid. There was like thick books. There was 9 of them in the series. I read all 9. And the director of the movie, she has aviation and like fighter pilot. Like her father, I think, was a fighter pilot. She's been around this, and she's the one who's putting together.
Wow.
She said, "I'm making Top Gun for Star Wars," and I said, "Like
that's what I want."
Oh, be still, gigantic erection. We will be there soon. Like, I don't know how else to properly explain this, but like, you want to talk about getting horny for a movie? Like, that was it.
Nice.
Whew.
I didn't know you were big into aviation. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, I worked for an airline for like 5 years, and I got,
Nice.
and the nature of my job was that I was around almost every department because I was in communications, and I was kind of like a conduit. People would ask me questions, and I would hunt the answers, and that would mean I would go to maintenance, the hangars, everything. So I was like in all the planes, under all the planes, in the maintenance bays, like learning all the stuff, and it was just fascinating to me because I had a fear of flying, and part of me combating that was understanding the physics and like the build and like the mechanics of the actual airplane to the point where I'm like, it takes one hell of a force to get one of these to fall out of the sky. And I was like, anyway.
Yeah, that's why you have that saying. It's much easier to, if something happens to you, for it to happen to you as a pedestrian or as a person driving in a car than in a freaking plane. So these things are super safe. But whenever one crashes, like everybody talks about it because it's like it's a big thing.
Yeah.
They don't talk about all the car crashes that happen on a daily basis, right? On any road that's passes through next to your house or whatever.
Yeah. It's more likely for standard rotation to occur in Gwent than it is to be in a plane crash. Those are just facts.
I like how you just slide it in standard rotation into this episode. Easy. Very nice.
Standard rotation and DMs. It's what I slide into best. Perfect. All right, give us the Renfri rumor report, because Dagon, we've basically beaten that one to death. So just hit us with the Renfri rumor report.
So yeah, I saw that a lot of people from the community have been talking about this new board that we have in the game, which kind of is showing an eclipse. So everybody's kind of thinking what it is, and everybody's like, "Oh, it's Renfri for sure." Maybe it's not. Maybe it's Crimson Curse making a comeback. You don't know. Maybe it's Dagon. You don't know. Why do you assume that it's Renfri?
I don't assume anything. To me, I don't even know what a Renfri is. I just don't. I think I've seen it in the season 1 of the show, but any scene in that show that wasn't Geralt, I was not interested in. Mainly because I'm just a fan of what's his face,
Henry Cavill.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, Renfri is a sought after character because she was quite important in the story itself. She was also one of the ladies that were cursed and that were supposed to bring the end of the world. So she was haunted by these crazy people like Stregobor. Like there was this other dude that was also a prophet that was saying that there's like 60 of them and that they will bring the end to everything. So yeah, I mean it's also like in the she was a love interest for Geralt, which is I think why people treat her as a interesting, important character. But I think she was just simply just a badass, and I feel like a lot of people they just like badass female characters, which I totally get, because I'm also a big fan of this type of portrayal instead of like being the damsel in distress and waiting for someone to save her. Now she just kicked everybody's ass and was also a skilled fighter. So really, really, I think that's what kind of is drawing people into it. And I'm not surprised that everybody wants her to be in the game, especially that we have this Renfri guy who's making these beautiful cards in order for us to actually, let him rest one day. Maybe we will do that, but who knows when? No one knows when. It's like with Dagon, you never know. It might happen, might not happen.
He can rest whenever he wants to rest.
No, but if once you commit to something, you need to keep going. You can't just say like, "No, I won't do it."
That's true. Right? It's not like I don't even know. Commitment and Flake are not friendly terms. All right.
No, come on. We've almost done 20 episodes.
I'll cut, dude.
That is a big commitment. So,
I'll commit to you until the end of time, buddy. That's the thing. All right.
Likewise.
Etiquette. Etiquette is our topic today, Pavel Burza, and it's etiquette in the sense of you're sitting at a table. You're at your LGS, you're at your local game store. There's like an event going on. What's the proper etiquette? But also, you're sitting in your living room in your underwear. You got the Haagen-Dazs smeared all over your wife beater, and you got mustard stains on your shorts. And you've got warm Diet Pepsi that's going flat because you just
apart from the Pepsi, everything's on point. Like ice cream, yes.
Yeah.
Mustard stain, yes.
And then you're busting out, you're playing a little on your laptop, playing some Gwent, you're playing some Terra, you're playing some MTGA, Hearthstone, whatever. What is the etiquette for digital as well? We're going to tackle this delicious topic. It's so layered. It's like a tiramisu. So
you just know what I'm going to eat after this.
Is it tiramisu? I was going to say millefeuille, but millefeuille is like, it's too many layers. 1,000 layers, too much.
No, too many.
All right.
Tiramisu is like perfect when it comes to layers.
So let's go with the tabletop etiquette right now, Mr. Pavel Burza. So describe to us just the standard parts of etiquette, and I also want to hear like some of your worst stories of encountering terrible etiquette, because I have my own, and I think everyone does. If you've been to any event, you'll probably bump into someone where you're like, oh my, like this is just, you don't act like this. So hit us with it.
You want the story first, or you want my take on what's like the top, I don't know, 5 to 10 things that you need to mind once you're going to a local game store?
I think we need to sort of set the foundation as to what proper etiquette is, and then we can go into the don'ts. And
okay.
All right, so we'll go back and forth. Like we'll set out some like rules, some commandments.
Don't be late. And if you are late to an event that you're coming into your local game store, let one of your friends from that game store know that you're going to be late, or the organizer, or anything like that. I've had events which I signed up for online, and if I knew I wasn't going to make it, I would just let them know beforehand, a couple hours, that I won't be joining them. So yeah, also good because they sometimes can, if you pay for like taking part in the tournament, they might move your the money that you paid in to the next one. So don't forget about that. Let's be human, so no one is waiting for you and stopping everybody else from participating in the event because of you being late. So that's, be on time, or if you're late or you can't make it, let them know.
That's a very good point. I have been to tournaments where we're all ready to go, and then the organizer is just there. He's like, yeah, so-and-so is going to be like 15 minutes late, so we're just going to wait for them. And everyone's like, are you kidding me? We're like, why? And I've been in situations where this has occurred, where the rules clearly stated it is it's like a noon sharp you start, and if you're not there, you are, whatever your pairing is, you suffer the standard penalties of certain things. I've been in that situation where it's happened where my opponent was late, and I even offered. They were like 10 minutes late, and I offered. I said, look, like we could play the game if you want, and he's like, no, they just accepted the loss. But I mean, it was an official thing. But I've also been to tournaments where the organizer was like buddy with the player who was late, but the problem was that the player was late because they knew they could be late. They weren't late because something happened. They were late because they knew that they were cushioned by the person organizing it. And then we all have to wait for this schmuck ass to show up. And then everybody, and then that pushes everything back, because by the time the person showed up, and like everyone's pissed, everyone's annoyed, and that just throws everything off. So that's a very good one. Be on time to your event.
And you go home later because of that, and if you have any other plans after that, they just pretty much go down the drain. And probably you have some plans unless your only plan is to come back home and eat tiramisu and play more games, right?
That's totally it. I did get I don't say minor. I don't say minor revenge. Like that LGS, I don't go to it anymore. Some of the people there kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And it was just one of those things where even when the dude did show up, it was like they showed up, they played like one match, they didn't give two Fs about it, they picked up their promos and then left. Yeah. And we're like, come on, like don't
cool for school.
Basically. Yeah. This person was like one of the self-declared like best players in the world who hasn't done anything in a year because people found the game and were like, yeah, you're good now, but wait till actual card players show up and start playing. And then this person has done nothing. Anywho. All right.
But you always get those people who are the star of the LGS or self-proclaimed star of the LGS. They don't maybe even have anything to back it up with, but still they want to be there because, they want to be worshipped.
Basically. Like, that was, I mean, that's a whole, that's a whole other discussion. Like LGS ego and such, man.
Games and buddy buddies.
But like I showed, like it all started like on a particular time where I showed up to the place. It was my first time there, and they were trying to sell me to like go to that store and go to the events because this one particular player played there, and I didn't know who this player was. They're like, oh, so-and-so plays here. I said, I have no clue who that is. And they're like, well, basically, they're like, yeah, they practice in the corner there, but make sure that you don't go talk to them because it's all secret stuff. And, I'm like, so you're telling me that this person plays here, but I'm not allowed to interact with them. So, like, what is this? Is like a museum? Like, are they behind a velvet rope?
It's a statue. Like,
yeah. What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed, like, I don't get it, Anyway. And that degraded into all kinds of other nonsense. But long story short, I'm in a position now where those people are asking me for my time, and I'm like, no thanks. I'm all right.
I saw you posted that Hairy Tarantula will have like a place where new people can come in and learn Flesh and Blood, right?
Yes. Hairy Tarantula is... Look, I'm I don't want to say like they sponsor some of my content. I found a home with Hairy Tarantula because everyone that I've played with there, everybody who works there, the store is a wonderful place. It's a clean place. It's a respectful place. It's a well-stocked place. It's got a cafe in it. You can get food there. They're just good people, and the caliber of players there. Like you'll go to a draft. A standard casual $10 draft, and at your draft tables, I'm like, oh, there's a world champion. There's a this tournament winner. This, like, when I played in that, one of my first major tournaments was like to qualify for Pro Tour. I played at Hairy Tarantula, and I was second seed. I finished second seed, 5-1, and I ended up losing in the top 8. But people were like, you were second seed at Hairy Tarantula. Like, do you understand like how big that is? I said, I have no idea. I'm still kind of like figuring stuff out. So that was a nice little wake up call. But that place is amazing. So, and they are in fact doing a, if you're in the Toronto region or whatever, go to Hairy Tarantula on, this coming weekend, because they're doing a learn to play Flesh and Blood. And there's no better people, in my opinion, that will teach you the game than the people at Hairy Tarantula. They're great people.
Nice.
All right. Etiquette number 2. The on-time one was excellent. This one is I think this is needless to say for the grand scheme of the world, but for the love of God, take care of your freaking body and your hygiene. Look.
My favorite one.
This could very well be number 1, and I'm kind of glad that you went a different route, because
I went a different route because I knew that one of us are going to go to that one, and because it's one of the most important ones. And I know it sounds funny. I know it sounds like, oh, they're making fun of someone. No, it's really an issue. Really.
It is an issue. So when I say that, I mean, like, I don't give 2 Fs about your clothing or what you're wearing or your style, be you. Always be you. But the you should be should also be not disgusting smelling and stuff. Like I'm being completely honest, and I get it. We live in Canada. The winter's not a problem, but when it gets like 35 degrees and humid, in Toronto, which it does very, very frequently, it gets pretty dank, baby. It gets sweaty and nasty. But I can confidently say I have been to a small event where I was playing against somebody, and I basically stopped blocking. Like, I was playing Magic. I just stopped blocking and I scooped because I was like, oh, no, you got me. You got me. And because I had to get up and vacate of the premises. Like, I was like, this is terrible. But so hygiene is part of the etiquette. Please, friends, be as stylish as you want, but shower and clean your body and brush your teeth and just don't even be like pleasant to smell. Be not unpleasant to smell. You get what I'm saying?
Be neutral smelling at least. Like,
yeah,
soap, shampoo, deodorant, these are all your friends.
They're so much your friends. Like,
and toothpaste.
I'm worried, dude. I'm going to Vegas tomorrow. And so tomorrow being, today's what, Wednesday? So I'll be when this goes out, I will be knee deep in Las Vegas. Today's the 8th, Wednesday the 8th. I'll be in Vegas tomorrow the 9th through till Tuesday, playing in the Flesh and Blood Uprising World Premiere. And I'm worried because, do you know what the forecast is for all 5 days I'm there?
Vegas is probably going to be hot. It's in the middle of a freaking desert. But it's just going to be scorching.
Yeah. Do you want the high first or the low?
What's the high?
The high on all 5 days is like 41 degrees. 40.
I was gonna say 40, and I was like, is it gonna be 40 or a little bit over 40? 41, nice.
The lows are like 29, 30. Those are at night. I am so worried about the people who are going to be showing up to these venues. Like, it's a short walk from your hotel to the venue or whatnot.
Yeah.
But dear Lord, please double tap that deodorant. Get it, go it, do it. Bring a spare shirt if you have to. But hygiene in my opinion was number one. But I mean, I don't think these aren't in any tier system.
Yeah, and I also want to say that it's been already. I know there were like some weird campaigns, especially for like Magic players to actually, shower and take care of their body. I think there were some events in which you got some care products from a sponsor. I think this was a thing once, just to, hygiene and kind of keep those things in mind. But I wanted to also kind of extend this as a card game player to another card game player. We don't want to be called sweaty nerds all the time. Like, we want to be considered as enthusiasts or lovers of card games that, can be cool, can be nice smelling, and don't have the reputation of a sweaty ass nerd and that nobody wants to interact with and that no girl will or guy or whatever will ever like. So, let's work on our PR as card game players.
I think I think that's shifting though. I think it's shifting because
it is.
If you go to events these days, like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, maybe it was different, but like every event I go to, everybody is like very well put together, well dressed, and like everything. And I mean, I say well dressed. They're not showing up in shirt and ties, but like they're bringing their standard stuff. But like everybody's like prim, proper, yeah. And I'm like, that's a plus. So don't be one of the few who are still in the primordial goo who haven't evolved out of there, like
I also feel like geek culture is becoming cool now, and people are kind of embracing that. Like it's much different than back in the day. Like, oh, you play card games, you're a nerd, you should be playing football or something, right? I feel like that is kind of shifting with all the Marvel movies, with all the comics that are becoming more popular now, with all the card games that people are actually playing in person. Like, I know a lot of people have their opinions about MTG doing like these collaborations with, with other like brands and stuff like that. But I feel like it's bringing more people to, to the table and or even to the coffee table. And sometimes people that I know who were never into card games are, picking up card games because they're like, oh, this might be cool. This is something that I can do with my brother. This is something that I can do with my friends. I can have them over, just bust out some cards, get something to eat together and just have a good time, right? Board games also have become something that people kind of, gather around and also spend their free time. And I think it's becoming, something that is more seen by the masses now.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, people are kind of, thinking about also hygiene, etiquette, and all these things. So I think it's going in a good direction. It's not only people who, shower once a week only and just sit all day, when it's 30 plus degrees in the summer in shorts, like sweating like hell in their gamer chair and pretty much stuck to it, with swamp ass and all that. And just,
I'm so glad you mentioned swamp ass.
pretty much, just waiting for the next game to start and then, going to sleep and repeating the same process over and over again. I think these are more social people now and, they're evolving.
I'm so sorry. I don't know why, because every now
swamp ass is like the best word. It makes everybody always laugh it gives you such a like vivid, like your imagination just goes there and you see it and and you can feel it.
Yeah,
it's just so good.
It's like there's no more Babcha Marisha word of the week, but we've got a word of the week for you this week.
Swamp ass.
Swamp ass. Okay, you got another etiquette for us?
Okay, since you mentioned hygiene, I say this is something that we kind of talked about. I think it's just learn to lose and don't bring the salt like all the way. Like I know we're playing card games. I know that in the heat of the moment you will get mad. You will be, I don't know, you will be frustrated, and we get that. We've all been there. But I feel like going actually to an LGS, interacting with people, I feel like you will learn to appreciate the feedback that you get and also learn a little bit more from the people that you're playing against or the people that are playing, because you can also, if you finish your match, you can always, this is what I love doing. I also love like spectating and going next to a table if someone is playing something different and I see that it's like a very tense match. I just like to hover over and kind of see like what they're doing. There are people like watching, commenting. I think it's really cool. So yeah, just come to learn and don't be salty and don't be mad when you lose, right? I know it's a lot of things, but it kind of is. I think it's this open-minded mentality that you need to have.
Yeah, a lot of people are going to be that. I mean, that's a big one, and that those skills or sort of how to deal with that can be translated into many other life lessons in that regard, where things are not always going to go your way in anything. Like, I remember I used to get frustrated. There were days that everything went wrong. Like you're leaving the house, you drop your keys. You go to lock your door and the key won't fit and you drop your keys again. You're like, oh my God. You go to the car and you're like, oh, I forgot I had to get gas. And then you're going and you hit every red light on the way and you get salty about it and it's unfortunate. And then, I had a nice little sort of change of perspective on life. Like after when I was in the hospital and I got out of there, I just was like, there are worse things that can happen than traffic or this. So it was a drastic, re-imaging of how I see things. But ultimately, in card games specifically, you have to understand that if you're playing thousands of games over your lifetime, you're going to lose some, and you're going to be subject to bad draws or drawing dead, or your opponent's going to top deck you. Like it's statistics. It's just the way it's going to go. That, like, oh, he had a 1 in 50 chance of drawing the card he needed. Well, how many games did you play? How many games in your life have you played that a 1 in 50 chance is going to happen? It's going to happen. And how many times has it happened to you against them? So you're right. How to deal with losing is an immensely important just overall aspect of life, because you're not always going to win. And I do this all the time with my friends who play, like if I play with like Halo or this or that, I always have to have this conversation sometimes, specifically with one friend, where if we're playing Apex Legends or Halo and they die and they get so pissed, I have to be like, are you the best player in the world? No? is it fathomable that another player can possibly either have an advantage over you in this particular scenario or just overall be better than you? Can that happen? Okay, so then why are you so over the top upset about this happens? And the same thing happens in card games. Being able to take a loss properly is vital to your own future success, because if you carry that with you, it'll bleed into all of your future decision making, and you cannot let that happen. You cannot take one loss home with you. And I see how that can go, because I've been in scenarios, and you have been in scenarios where the wheels fall off and you lose when you should win, and it stings. But it's how you digest it and what you get out of it that really is important. And I have to agree with you there. That's a good piece of etiquette for sure.
Yeah, there are situations where you even lose by 1 point, or you might forget a trigger or something, or I don't know. It might be just because you're trying out a new deck and you just want to learn it, for example, or I don't know, if it's Flesh and Blood, you might be trying a new champion and building something around that. Or if in Magic, if you're switching colors or switching to a different type of deck, or if it's in Gwent, if you have a different archetype that you want to try out, like, be prepared to lose, but don't get salty about it, and don't get don't get discouraged because that's happening. Like, try to learn and get treat it as an experience pretty much for you to grow, instead of an experience that is you lose and you're like, oh, forget it, I'll just toss this and do something else, or go back to the other deck that I was playing, for example. But no, it's just follow through and enjoy the process. I think we've always talked about this, that the process is something that is important. That's actually the thing that is making you grow as a card game player.
No, absolutely. On top of that, we can add on learning how to be a good winner. That's also important too. In the same regard as you have to digest your losses, being able to properly take a win is important. I've mentioned this on previous podcasts.
I won.
Well, that's one way, absolutely. But you have to also put yourself in your opponent's shoes, everybody's out there angling for the same thing. I've been in positions where it was like me versus my opponent, and if they win, they're in top 8, and if I win, it doesn't matter, because I wouldn't make top 8 anyways. So I play gatekeeper to this one person. However, I also have to think, if I just scoop to this person, that I'm not doing justice to the integrity of the tournament, nor am I, and I'm robbing another person of a spot that they're fighting for. So
yeah,
I've been in those positions, and I've beaten players on their win-in-ins where it has meant nothing to me, where at the end of the day I finish, the best I can finish is 10th in a tournament of 50 people, but they only take the top 8. And if I beat that person, they're going to drop to 9th, and then they can't get in. So, but again, the difference there is you have to put yourself in their shoes. And what I like to do in those situations I've mentioned before is that when I beat a player, I like to make sure that I pull out one positive thing that they've done in that game and bring it up and say, this was a really good play. Like, well done on that. Like that, that caught me off guard and whatever. And I've been in salty matches. I've gotten my ass kicked where I've taken the same route and said, look, I'm like, I know I came off salty, but you put me through the ringer. Like, I had no chance. And part of it was because you did X, Y, Z, which I was not anticipating. And it really hindered my game plan, and kudos to you. So it's give and take. Really nice. It's give and take. And, but it makes you a better person in the community in general.
Yeah.
And I mean, these things matter. You see the same players at the LGS like every week or every couple of weeks that
exactly.
you go.
That's the best part. That's the best part. Like, this was something that I was telling you in like one of the episodes. Like, whenever I go back to playing Magic in person, when I actually have a little bit of free time, or I construct a deck that I really want to play, whenever I go, it's always the same people, and it's really awesome to see the same faces. Like, hey, what's up with you? Like, what are you doing? Are you still doing that? Like, how's your, I don't know, family? Like, are you still working there? Blah blah blah. Like, you built a sense of community there, which is just freaking amazing, and it's incredible, because it is something that I've always like highlighted, also for Gwen, but also for anything that you're passionate about. You build a community around it, and when you get to interact with these people, all of you have one thing in common, which is this one thing that all of you love. So why not, use this experience to learn from each other, to point out maybe some mistakes, and of course in a proper manner, or just give kudos to the other people, because they're also trying. Like Flake said, we're all going for the big W, but you're not going to win all the time. I don't know how good you are in the game. Like, always there are chances that you're going to be losing because of bad draws, because of a bad day. I've also seen that, I perform probably less when I'm super tired. So like all these things kind of, go into this equation that gives you the win or not. So
Yeah.
just, take it easy and enjoy the experience and learn from it, because learning from it, I think, is the best thing that we can do here in the CCG land.
Any more for tabletop stuff? I mean, there's all kinds of small little bits and pieces, but before we move on to digital,
I would say also, don't interrupt people. Like, I hate when I'm playing a game and maybe we're like the last pair to finish, let's say, because there's a timer. When we're playing an LGS, we're playing Magic, and everybody kind of forms around you and is starting to like point out things for you or your opponent, or you're trying to focus, talking like over you, or like laughing, commenting on everything. I feel like, we are already, we can discuss things after the match, but since we're all kind of focusing here and we're trying to, play and get this like finished as soon as possible, I don't want someone like, backseating behind me like ooh, I don't think that's fair.
yeah.
You might point it out after the match, which is totally fine, because you'll be like, oh, you missed the trigger here, or in my opinion, maybe you should have played this first, and then you get into. I love this because I love getting into these discussions. Like, people get into a discussion, like someone tells someone else, like, maybe you should have played this, and they're like, no, because if I play this, then I wouldn't play this at that time, and he would have destroyed that or countered that, blah 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 blah, and you get into a whole kind of theory crafting discussion, which is cool because you're thinking of possible scenarios and different ways to play.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's good like to talk about these things in the moment where people actually focus and are trying to carry out their game plan. So just don't be, backseater. And I think it applies to a little bit of both, because it's also when you're streaming the game. So some people don't like backseating. I don't mind it that much, but because I can also sometimes learn from it. But when you're in a, in a tournament scenario, or, it's like a FNM, I think just people want to focus on the game that they're trying to carry out and don't need everybody commentating over their heads.
Oh, no, I agree there. Definitely. I played in a tournament once where it was the last round of Swiss. I was 5-0. I was playing against a dude. It went the distance, and all the other tables had finished, so they all crowded around our table because it was a deck that nobody had seen that I was playing. So everybody was like, what the hell is this deck that is just dumpstering the field, right? So everybody wanted to watch, but everybody was also talking while and it was a pivotal turn. Like, it was the end of the game. Like, I had to find lethal with my hand or lose the game, essentially. And everybody was talking, and I'm kind of like looking around and I'm trying to, like, and eventually I said, hey guys, like, can we just, I don't mean to be a dick, but I'm trying to figure out, like, this is a very important turn. Like, can we just call it, like, quiet for like 2 seconds? Like,
yeah. Can we just focus on the
basically,
game,
right? I ended up winning the game, which was great, but like, like that etiquette as well. The other etiquette is, like, when you're playing, give your opponent your attention. And that is important, because I've played games where people are either like looking at their phone, not paying attention, talking to their buddy, looking around,
I hate that.
And then I'll do something and they'll be like, oh, wait a second, what'd you do? What'd you do? Can you run that back? And I'd be like,
pay attention.
That's it. And I'm very much one where I try not, I'm not a fan of angle shooting. I don't angle shoot anybody where it's like, well, if I don't tell them that there's an on-hit effect to this, then maybe they won't know and they'll let it go through. Like, all this, like, just being like, I'm very much just the type of, like, here's the situation, here's what it is. So I describe what's going on. If they're not paying attention, for those people, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt for the first time or two. But if you continue to not pay attention and I explain it, I'll be like, all right, this card, blah, 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 on hit, this, whatever, and if they're not paying attention, and they'll be like, how much is that coming in for? Because they're not paying attention, I'll just be like, oh, it's just coming in for 6. And then they'll let it go, and I'm like, all right, well, it on hit this. Like, oh, I didn't know. I'm like, I explained it. You were not listening. So give your opponent your attention. It's just it's just standard. It's standard etiquette practice for anything.
Yeah. On the other hand, it's also important to, whenever you're playing in person, to go through the motions, kind of explain, like, okay, I'm going to go to combat. I'm going to attack with ease. In response, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to sack this in order to that, or okay, if you do this, then in response, I'm going to do this, or if you play this, I'm going to counter. Like, you have to be explaining things. I'm the type of player that explains what I'm going to be doing. So, if someone is paying attention, they will know what just happened, right? But I feel like it's very good to be transparent in terms of the moves that you're doing. And I think, when it comes to high level play, I think it's very important, like, also that players are kind of explaining what they're doing, and yeah, both ends needs to be paying attention, because we're just human. We might be making mistakes. We might be forgetting about something. Of course, we don't have to be pointing out like, oh, you missed 1 damage here, like in the moment of the whole thing. But you can explain it to your opponent at the end of the match. But yeah, like when you're going through the motions, explain what you're doing, because you might have all type of players. You might have a player that just started playing and he or she doesn't know what is going on and is learning through this process because you're explaining it. And and I feel like it goes both ways. Doesn't matter how good you are or how seasoned of a player you are. Like, explain what you're doing, and I think it goes a long way.
Yeah. Digital clients are different because hygiene is not as much of an importance as well. But what about standard digital platform etiquette? Things like Hearthstone, Gwent, Legends of Runeterra, MTGA. So many card games out there that are played primarily, if not exclusively, on a digital platform. There are still ways that you can kind of, be a douche. It's completely possible. But you don't have to worry about showering. So congratulations to all you cave dwellers out there. Soap does not have to touch your fragile body to play these games. So congratulations. But how about rule number 1, etiquette, digital card games?
Don't message your opponent after the match because you want to call them bad things or say something about their mom or family or whatever.
100%.
Number one, that's why we don't have chat in Gwent. So people don't feel incentivized to do it. And yet still, they will invite people as friends on GOG in order to write like terrible stuff to them.
Yep. 1,000%. 1,000%. The amount of times I beat somebody with a deck and then you get like the friend request. I'm like, I know what this is. So decline. Yeah. Decline. Just for everybody's information, I don't accept friend requests unless I know they're coming. So if you just send me a random friend request, you are not going to get a friend request or accepted. Same thing with Facebook, by the way. Now that like I'm a little bit bigger in Flesh and Blood, people found me on Facebook and I have like dozens of like pending friend requests from people I don't know. And no offense to these people, I don't know if they're nice people or not, but if I do not know you, if I've never met you in real life, I am not accepting your friend request.
I have the same thing. I have a shit ton. Yeah. Especially since when I started working at CDPR and when I started to become more of a, in the media type of person, people would say the face of Gwent. Yeah, I've been in a position that I've got millions of invites from people, which I'm like, sorry, I do not know you.
Don't know you.
It's very Yeah, if it's someone that streams the games or is a content creator and we have interacted and talked, totally, you will be, we can be friends and it's really cool. You can like my Facebook Strava rides and all that stuff. It's all good. I will like your stuff. I will also wish you a happy birthday because Facebook will remind me when your birthday is, which I totally love about Facebook. But yeah, if I don't know you and you're just, you just want me as a friend because we never really interacted. And I also have the same thing. Like I won't invite, I don't know, Ben Brode or whatever on Facebook because of course we've met once, but still it's not like, I'm going to invite him because I feel like, we interacted once, so we're friends now. Or if I saw someone on TV, I'm not going to invite him as a friend because, I saw him on TV or whatever, on Facebook or on YouTube or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, I think I have the same mentality as you here.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're friends on Facebook, so that's all I care about. I'm going to change my relationship status to you. To
it's me, complicated.
It's complicated.
Exactly.
It has to always complicated.
People still do that. It's complicated status.
I don't know. I remember Facebook poke. There were still Facebook pokes. Remember those? I don't know if those still exist. Remember poking somebody on Facebook?
I think it would not be. It would be not something that would go through in this day and age now.
I don't think so. I'm like, all right, keep your.
Inappropriate behavior.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you Harvey Weinstein to me. Thank you. No, not interested.
Oh.
All right, my etiquette for this is going to be, do not abuse the game clock if you don't need to. In certain cases, and again, Shinmiri is going to probably be, boiling at this, but Shinmiri uses the game clock for important reasons, which is parsing out the turn and figuring things out. But like the people who are just doing it because in their mind are like, I'm a badass, this is how I make somebody on the other end of the internet annoyed. Like, to what degree? And you know what? If that's how you get your jollies, well, I feel really bad for you. And what's great for me is that when I was streaming Gwent and I would do this and people would do it to me, I'd be like, this is perfect. I have time to interact with my friend. I'm like, you're not getting me. Like, I'm not getting got here. I'm like, I'm streaming the game. So by all means. So please, a good etiquette would be to not just burn the clock down for the sake of burning the clock down. If you're thinking your turn or you want to use the game clock because you need to plan out your next turn, then by all means, that is just proper management of the resources given to you, time being one of those resources. But if you're just doing it because you think you're hot shit and this is how you get back at people, I'm sorry. The only person that thinks that you're cool is most likely your mom, and the hot pockets that she's making you for your basement dwelling life are not quite ready yet. So just chill out, play the game, and go from there.
Yeah, I agree. Like, don't abuse the clock if you really feel like you don't need to be doing so. If you're just doing it for kicks or just to show your dominance or express your dominance in this way. But also I feel like it goes both ways because sometimes, be mindful that someone might be streaming the game. That's why he or she might be taking a little bit more time because to make a decision. But I feel like also don't be emoting the person that is thinking about their turns, like saying like, oh, whoa, time, come on, time. I feel like also this kind of applies to because when you play higher level tournaments, you will have judges like roaming around. I've been already in situations where judges were kind of making my life more stressful, telling me to play like a little bit faster. And I get it. It makes sense. But I feel like at my LGS, there was this one judge that was just a pain in the ass, was just like, telling me like, hurry up. I was like, go away.
Yeah.
I still have time. It's like we're on the clock. Our clock hasn't even, run out. So it's not like, we're playing for whatever. It's like, he's like, but I'm the judge here. I'm like, dude, I know you are the judge. Like,
we're all adults.
I'll call you.
We're all adults. We all know how to read time. Like, this is, I completely agree with you there. Respecting the clock is one thing, but when people are just kind of hounding you, and this is a really tough part because in Flesh and Blood, there's a really tough and controversial way of when the clock runs out, the player whose turn it is finishes their turn and then their opponent has a turn. If the game is not resolved, both players get an L. There's no ties.
Wow.
A draw is as good as a loss. So it's incredibly important to be vigilant of the clock. And there are certain archetypes. There's certain archetypes that like to fatigue players, so the games usually go 45 minutes plus, which I know a lot of other CCG players there who are like, 7 minutes is the sweet spot for a game of cards. It's like, well, oh boy, like,
play some control magic in person and wait for the whole thing to last like at least almost up to 50 minutes when people run out of the clock and they have like this, they need to like, they have a couple turns in which they need to execute their plan. If they don't, then the person who is, dominating at that one time has a higher life level will pretty much go, we'll proceed and get the W in this case.
And in certain cases as well, like being vigilant of the clock and like being respectful to your opponent in terms of the time that you're taking. In Gwent, you have your own timer. In many other tournaments like Magic or Flesh and Blood, you have a communal timer. The round starts at noon and ends at 12:50. And if your game's not done by 12:50, you both lose. So if you suck up 35 minutes and give your opponent 15, that is poor etiquette, right? That is just, and I know a lot of pro players, like one of them, a very good friend of mine, Dave Rude, who runs Harry Tarantula, is like, he's won Magic championships. Like, he's a really top tier player, and he said on Twitter, but like also discussing with like a bunch of my Flesh and Blood buddies, of like, I'm no longer Mr. Nice Guy. I used to give my opponent time, but now, like, I think it was like taking more losses due to ties, where he's like, I can't do that anymore. He's like, I took 15 minutes of the game clock. My opponent took 35 minutes. Like, yeah. I'm not, like, you need to sort of eventually also police your own game and be like, you have to call a judge for slow play. And it's possible. Like, it's just like, look, my turns are taking 60 to 90 seconds. My opponent's turns are taking 5 minutes apiece. Like, it can't be that way. It's unfortunate. But, I mean, that's also part of the etiquette, is just respecting your opponent's time as well and expecting the clock. Yeah. So I wanted to drop
it goes both ways. Like, you should respect their time, and they should respect your time. And it goes both ways in this case.
Definitely. No, of course it does. Like, I'm not saying rush out your turns. Take the time you need. But eventually, you need to understand that, it's one basket that everyone's pulling out of, and if you've got the majority of it, like, that's just unfair. Another piece of etiquette that I wanted to put out there is, if you are losing a match, do not just disconnect and F off because you think that you're cool. And you're, again, sticking it to your opponent because it's like, I'm going to lose this match anyways, so I'm just going to, rage quit and let the timer run out or whatever. Just forfeit. Take it like an adult and move on.
Just escape enter. You don't need to auto foreclose the game.
Just take the loss. Don't try to be a hero. You're not like a cowboy because you're sticking it to him, My favorite
It's like people who are trying to prove a point for no reason to prove a point. It's like, it doesn't make sense.
My favorite move is when somebody does that. I'm like, again, I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter. In fact, like, when I would stream Gwen and people would do that to me, I'm like, all you're doing is showing everybody your name and the kind of sore loser wuss that you are. Like, that's all it is. So your name appears after I beat you. Here's the person. And then my favorite thing is to hit the GG button so that when that person relogs into the game, they get a notification saying that Flake sent you a GG. So it's a nice reminder that I beat them. It's the best.
Yeah.
Because they think that they're just kind of pulling the plug out of the matrix and that reality ceases to exist. But when they go back, it's like, no. Here's the residual effects of it. In fact, here's 7 gold. Go make a better deck.
Maybe it's, I sometimes feel maybe people just do it because they don't want to see the defeat screen. Like, they don't like, no, that didn't happen. No, disconnect. Like, you still lost, but why are you doing this? Are you doing this because you think that if you disconnect, that someone is going to disconnect also because you're already disconnected? No, it's that I'm just going to wait. And I hate it when I'm streaming the game and someone disconnects and I just need to wait for like for trying to reconnect your opponent. It's like, it won't happen. Also in MTG Arena, you have that thing that, you have a timer, and once the timer runs out already, the next timers for that person are faster. So they get faster. So the game concludes much quicker because you also have people who just go AFK because why not, right? Mm-hmm. I've been AFK in the digital card games, but it's probably because I sometimes play during, like, I don't know, doing something at work, and I forgot that I booted up the game, that I ran into someone, and I'm like, and then I go back and I'm like, defeat, wait, did I queue in? Oh, I did queue in, sorry. But yeah, like, just be mindful of your opponent's time and your time.
That's an important one. I think I got one more, and it's not even an etiquette thing, because I think that the one that I want to say, people can agree or disagree to me. I wouldn't necessarily say it's etiquette but I think it's worth mentioning. And to me, it's when your opponent concedes or like passes the round, don't continue playing cards after you won. And I see the other side of the coin. So I'm not even going to say that this is like an etiquette rule or anything, because some people like to see what their opponent is holding to know if their intuitions were correct. Like, sometimes you're like, okay, I'm not going to win this, but I had you on Igni, or I had you on Earden, or I had you on God knows what other cards, that are out there. I had you on like a big card, and you already won, but I want to see it. So I'm not really up in the air. I don't think it's necessarily a major etiquette faux pas, but I've been in scenarios where like I know I haven't won. I've got 3 cards left. My opponent is just way ahead of me. So I'm like, I'll just pass with 3 cards, take the win. I don't want to just forfeit. I want to let you. I do the same thing like in Hearthstone. In Hearthstone, I like to give my opponent who fair and square beat me the opportunity to just swing for lethal and get the hit. Like, you earned it. I put my sword down, finish me off, put me out of my misery. But what they do then is they start running off spells and playing new things when they have lethal on board. And so I give my opponents the opportunity to go ahead and attack and kill me. But if they start circle jerking to
BM, classic BM.
That's classic BM. Between that and emote spam, I don't know what I hate more, but emote spam is probably the other one. I don't know if we talked about it, but emote spam is, to me, the final nail in the coffin. Just shut the up. Just shut up.
I just mute the person who already starts. Like, if you use it twice the same thing at one given time, you're muted. Like, I don't care. I don't have time for this. I don't want to hear you spamming like go faster, or hello. Yeah. It's like, okay, I'm done. I'm done. I don't.
Your go. Your go. I hear you. I get it. You're playing Nexus of Fate. It's never my go. So, so that's those are some basic etiquettes. I mean, everyone should be showering, so I don't even need to. We should not have to say these things. Clean your body.
It's basic etiquette, but it's important. There's one thing that I want to also kind of add that I feel like shows a little bit of the difference between, when you're playing in person and versus when you're playing online. I feel like when you're in person, I do not really appreciate people who do something like they're like, okay, I'll forfeit because I don't really care because I won't be in the top, I don't know, 8, top 3 or whatever, so I won't be getting any prizes. I really appreciate people who, even if they're, at the bottom of the whole thing, that they play out all their matches in a given day instead of just forfeiting and going home and being like, you don't even have to be salty, but they come with a mentality that they're only here in order to get something out of it. And I feel like it's a little bit maybe disrespectful to some of the players that are coming in to learn the game or to, take something from it. Just play out your games. And something that you kind of mentioned that, you sometimes can be the gatekeeper for someone to, make into a top 8. And that you won't make it in, but you will still play in through that game because you might have a chance of winning. And I feel like it's only the fair play thing to do instead of like, giving someone else the W or getting into this, because some people might be just like, if you concede to me now, I'll be able to get into a top 8. So they're kind of, doing this like shady transactions. And this unfortunately happens, I feel like, in LGSs, that people are treating this like a transactional thing. And I feel like it's not really cool. It's a little bit shady, not something that you should be doing. And of course, it's okay to forfeit in a digital card game if you're just queuing in a normal ladder. And I feel like, your opponent is going to be able to queue in very quickly into someone else. So they're not losing anything there. But if you're playing in a local game store and people come there for the intent of actually playing the game and going through all the motions and learning and, interacting, being part of a community, it's much more respectful towards the other person to actually play your games out instead of just, coming in like, oh, whatever, I'm going to forfeit, or you forfeit so I can get in. It's two different things in like two different scenarios, but I feel like it's really important to actually play the games if you're playing them in person or if it's like a big tournament, because people come there to to get the experience and actually play at a higher level, so they actually want to go against as many opponents as possible.
I like it. All right. No sponsors, I guess.
No. But Blue Jeans and Flurza 5. Always Flurza 5.
Always Flurza 5.
983shop.com. 983shop.com. Dagon Rumor Reporter t-shirts and hoodies and other stuff and mugs. and you can all become Dagon Rumor reporters.
You know what?
And you can also report on Renfri.
Let's throw in Harry Tarantula. Why not? Harry Tarantula has been very supportive of a lot of my stuff here. So this is a CCG program, right? So go to harryt.com if you like card games. Use the code FLAKE5 to get 5% off your first order, or just use the code FLAKE to support the podcast. harryt.com. Honestly, Harry Tarantula is like one of the best card shops, especially if you're in Canada or North America. Highly recommend you check out harryt.com. So we'll just throw that in there. Good people.
And if you're in Warsaw, Poland, go to Strefa MTG. I know that's very Polish, but strefa.mtg.pl. They don't sponsor me or anything like that, but it's my local game store that I love going to. Some of the best Polish players actually go there. Super nice community, awesome people to talk to. If you want to learn Magic in person, or if you want to play anything from, they play Star Wars, Warhammer there, anything. They also have a ton of different board games that you can check out there. Totally go and meet the people. And if you want to learn Magic, it's also a good place to check that out.
Perfect. All right, we got the mailbag coming right around the corner, friends.
All right, hello and welcome back to the Q&A, or the mailbag as we love to call it, where we answer your questions coming through Reddit and Twitter. And we shall start off by the ones that were going through Twitter. Once again from Kachigar. Hey guys, what do you think about inviting some other guests to the show sometimes? It was nice to see Arya. Yes, she was in the previous episode. And I think we'll start with that because there's another question just for you.
Yeah.
What do you think about guests on the show?
I don't mind guests. I mean, podcasts in general have different formats. We don't have a guest format because, I mean, there's you and I, and we have a lot to say. What, are we going to wedge someone in here and not let them speak? We're selfish. That's just
once we run out of topics, we'll have more people.
Yeah, I mean, I get the appeal of having guests, and we've had guests on the show in the past, but they were basically because their viewpoints were incredibly pertinent to the conversation that we were trying to have. So. I don't know who we could bring in. Like, you know what? Who we should bring in is we should probably bring in balance people and just have another go at balance and bring them in and let them discuss it. Not that it's going to change anything because everyone's going to continue to cry a foul about everything and nobody can agree on anything. But I get it. I mean, the thing about Arya was that Arya was visiting for the week, so she was here. So I said, yeah, just jump in. Like, my coffee's not ready, so go. You do it. Who would you want to have? I
mean, if you want guests, like watch Twig. That's where I invite people from the Gwent community in order to talk about everything Gwent related, and also like their approach to streaming, which games kind of define them, or how they started, getting into streaming overall or playing CCGs. That's a place for it. I feel like me and Flake, we have always a lot to say, and I feel like there's a problem because we don't seem to be running out of topics, and with every episode we feel like we come up with 1 or 2, 3 or even more topics that we can discuss in the next one. So it's super easy, but I agree with you. It would be nice to actually have a balanced episode and probably have someone else apart from John maybe also to come in, so people don't say like there's only one balanced person on the balance team, which is a team that has been growing exponentially throughout Gwen's lifetime. So that is one that is on my list. Apart from that, I feel like if there are topics like we had the topic of female representation in CCGs overall, like it was good to have a round table with some badass girls that are playing, any CCG from Gwen to MTG to whatever, and it makes the talk, makes the answers and kind of discussion more valid instead of just me and Flake like rambling about it. So I feel like if we ever get into a question where we need support, that's where we will kind of go there, and we will actually make like a whole episode out of it. And I feel like that's kind of our MO, how we kind of operate here.
Yeah. It's just we're just not that kind of podcast, and I'm okay with that. Did you know that the only time I've ever declined being on a podcast style thing was Twig, when you asked me to do Twig, and I said no, I don't want to do it. You're the only one in my entire life that I've ever declined. I have been on every single other podcast that's ever asked me to be on their podcast, except for This Week in Gwent. When you asked me and I said no, I was like, this is a first for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it doesn't make much sense because we talk weekly about CCGs.
Yeah, but nobody wants me on Twig. That is just a fact.
That is not true.
Well, I believe it's true. Trust me, because you know what? The Twig episode is just going to be me telling people, it might not go well. Because the people who would want me on there probably want me on there for the wrong reasons. We're gonna ask them all the hard questions.
I feel like there are still a lot of people that love you in the Gwen community. I just feel
we gotta find them. Where are they?
They are there. Maybe they're not the most vocal ones,
but possibly
the most vocal ones are the ones talking about shitty balance in the game. So
yeah, maybe
are the most visible ones. But there are people who are nice and who. This is actually a good thing because we're talking about questions. There was a question that I answered on Reddit about someone saying that we're not all bad here, specifically talking about Reddit, that there are people who bring in constructive criticism when it comes to stuff, and they kind of also validated and said, I know maybe our kind of comments and stuff are being lost throughout all the spill out of all the negativity, but we would like just to be seen and kind of taken into account when it comes to the things that are passing on. So yeah, we see you. We appreciate the constructive feedback, and whenever we're seeing it, we're also interacting with us. So totally, there are we know there is love and there's positivity here, even if it's like even if it's constructive criticism, which can be harsh, but it is said in a proper manner in a nice way. We appreciate that, and we won't shy away from someone being critical about the stuff that we do. So yeah. So I feel there are people who love you too, man. Don't worry about it.
Oh, I know people love me.
In the Gwen community.
Oh, maybe.
There are.
Listen, trust me. I understand, but there's a lot of people who would love to stuff a pie in my mouth, tell me to shut the F up, but that's fine by me because it's.
Well, you like to talk. I like to talk.
I like to talk, exactly.
Yeah.
And
you sometimes don't have a filter, right? You just go straight in for anything.
For sure.
I sometimes feel that I'm a little bit on the too nice side, but I kind of have to be because I'm kind of representing a company.
Exactly. I ain't representing shit.
You're representing yourself, so you can be like super open, genuine, and true to yourself. But I don't think I am that type of person that goes all in and tells someone to goes in with all the hot garbage and stuff like that. I think I've always had like a little bit of a filter, but yeah.
Well, I mean, like you said, you have to because you're representing CPR. You're right. I am representing myself, and the one thing that I never want anybody to accuse me of is being deceitful.
Yeah.
I mean,
or ingenuine, right?
Right.
Yourself.
I am who I am, and you're gonna get my opinion, and I will happily listen to yours if you happily listen to mine. That's just the way it goes. Follow-up question to this was, how dare I not play The Witcher 3? Look, I understand and recognize that Witcher 3 is a achievement of RPGs. It's probably one of the best ever, is what I'm told and what everybody seems to be in agreement with. I'm just not a big RPG player. That's just the fact to me. I understand the beauty of RPGs, the storytelling, the immersion, but if I'm going to
I love them.
Of course, and to each their own. To me, that time is better spent on my couch right there with a coffee and a book. That, to me, when it comes to storytelling and such, I get much more satisfaction and fulfillment with a fresh coffee and a book and just the silence of playing it without the stresses and whatnot. I'm not saying that RPGs are bad, and I've played RPGs. One of my favorite RPGs of all time is A Link to the Past on SNES.
Ooh, perfect.
Like a great one. And I've played that one multiple times, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. But I own Cyberpunk. I own all three Witchers. I've played 3 minutes of all of them combined because, in all honesty, I try it and I'm like, I can't get into this. I'd rather be there on my couch, like reading a book and in that regard. So how dare I not? I just don't enjoy it. Or I enjoy other things ahead of it.
Or you also don't have no time since you're a busy man.
That's also true. I honestly do.
I have the same problem with RPGs. I like to get into them, and in order for me to get into them, I need to be playing at least a couple hours daily, and that's always hard to do. Much easier to do in the wintertime, probably, because there's less going on, and there's less me focusing on cycling and stuff like that. But I kind of get that. I also like want to split it kind of between also watching some TV shows and series and stuff like that, which I love doing like with my wife after work. So but we also like playing games together, and we don't have a problem of like just dropping some TV shows and stuff like that, or Netflix or whatever, and actually going into a game and playing it together. I think that's also really cool and fun to do.
Next question from Aditya Mulia. For Gwent expansions in the future, is it possible to get a crossover with other CDPR games? For instance, Gwent and Cyberpunk.
This is an interesting question because I feel like it makes a lot of sense to have a crossover here. The only crossover that we really did was we have a coin that is inspired by Cyberpunk, and we have a card back which is also inspired by you have V, and you have Johnny Silverhand, so samurai inspired. But I feel like what we love to do as a company and what we dislike doing as a company is mixing universes. It is something that for us is a big no-no. We like to keep these two things separate because I feel like both Gwent and Witcher and Cyberpunk are very different. And I feel like even if you, I mean, we have like this thing with Siri, right? That she is moving through space and time. And we had this kind of nod to Cyberpunk and Witcher 3, where she said that she's been in a world which was in the future and stuff like that. So she was talking about it. So it's kind of like a wink wink, which is Easter egg / not direct, like, thing. And everybody was also expecting us to have in Cyberpunk Siri kind of appear in the game and jump out somewhere. But for us, we feel like it's just, something that we like to keep separate. Like, we won't mix these universes to have characters moving from one to the other, because we feel like, it's not something that we want to do. And we had the same discussion with Gwen. Like, even if we had a couple cards which depicted Cyberpunk characters, they would be in a different artistic style, different look, and I feel like they would not fit into the game. I also feel like we had problems with like having alternative versions of cards where or depicting some of the characters as, I don't know, snowman or elves, or for Halloween being, I don't know, dressed as ghosts and stuff like that. That kind of, we love to keep the visual identity of the whole thing like very strict. Same goes for, I don't know, portraying Geralt in a funny way. That is something that would not go through within our company because he cannot be shown as being depicted as a, I don't know, funny, stupid looking thing. Because for us, it's just internally, it's just a no-go. So it's kind of like a code that we have. Like, I think we once did like a Dark Horse figure of him kind of looking like a caricature of the normal Geralt, but he is still looking like a badass. Like, we would not show him in a funny manner. So we keep these things kind of separate once again, and we also are mindful of how we portray our characters from both Cyberpunk and from Gwent and then from The Witcher.
Magic did that. They cross sort of brands. Now, it wasn't within their own brand network, but it might have been, I think, under Hasbro. But they brought in like Godzilla stuff. They did a Godzilla theme in Ikoria where alternate art cards were Godzilla characters, which were really cool. But then they also did things like bringing in Walking Dead like as a secret layer, which was, in my opinion, pretty stupid. But
wasn't well received by the Magic community. I like when it makes sense. It makes sense. Like for one of the Innistrades, they did a nod to Dracula to have like Sorin, for example, look like Count Dracula, but in a nice artistic style. And I think it's more of a nod to the people who did vampires in the beginning and kind of started this whole vampire kind of thing going, which makes sense. But jumping on a bandwagon because of something that is, popular is not always the good way to go. Although I always have this thing that I always look at the other side, and I kind of feel that you want to be tapping into different communities and different people and showing that, there is a card game that is recognizing this, and maybe this will draw new players. But from my kind of experience, it normally doesn't draw those people in. They just see, wow, this is cool, I'll keep it as a collector item, but they won't really play the game or become part of the community. So they just, so it's just for pure sales in this case. So, which is just not, it leaves kind of like a bad taste in your mouth.
No, I feel you on that. All right, next question. I love this one. So this one's a deep one. I'm not going to go into this too much. Amrak CL wants to know about because I beat this drum all the time about standard rotation. I can't get into it too long. Again, we'll touch on this maybe in a future episode into more detail. Look, I've been beating this drum for quite a while now, and as new cards come out, it becomes more and more urgent to a degree that standard rotation is something that I feel is necessary in order for solving a lot of problems and creating a solution for the longevity of the game. That is how many other cards, and look, a lot of people who say that it's not good probably don't play other card games that have standard rotation. They either hear what other people say and echo that, or they just think that there's less cards means less options, in which case that's not true. What are my plans for standard rotation? If I were to, the question that Amrak asks also is that if I was in Vlad's body, like in a Freaky Friday situation, what would I do? The first thing I would do is I would order Burza into the office and give him a stellar review and a raise. That's what I would do. A stellar review and a raise.
Vlad, hope you're watching, man. If not, I'll clip this.
Clip it and send it. Vlad listens, right? I believe Vlad listens to this, but I've said this a million times over. First of all, Vlad is somebody whom in this industry, unparalleled respect for Vlad. I say this every time. I mean it. When I was a nobody, Vlad always had time for me. When 4 or 5 years ago, before I was ever hired by CDPR, Vlad always answered my messages, answered them honestly, and answered them completely. Vlad is somebody whom, currently might be making decisions that I don't necessarily fully agree with. However, I tell him that I don't agree. We have a discourse about it, but I always respect his decisions because he has earned that, and that is somebody whom I can't say about a lot of other entities out there that I've worked for or with. So if I was,
he takes the time on Reddit, he takes the time on Discord, he takes the time on Twitter. He also takes time to talk to everyone who's working on the development team for the game. He always has time for me to discuss stuff. I know he's super busy all the time, but he's still, with being game director, you people like watching or listening, you don't even have a clue how much work that entails, how many meetings that entails on a daily basis, how many people you're responsible for, how many processes you're responsible for going on. It's just incredible, but he still finds the time to talk to people, talk about, everyone's kind of problems. Also, he asked me, for example, like a week ago, like, how's my bike riding going and stuff like that. Something out of the blue on a meeting that we have, which is work related, but he still yet finds the time to, get on a more friendly personal level to talk about these things, which I really appreciate because it just shows that he's an awesome human being, right?
He is. And people who might say, well, you have to say that because you work for him. I don't work for him. I don't work for anybody. I work for myself. Well, he hires you for every event. No, he doesn't. He doesn't. So that said, I respect whom I respect, but that's another story. How would I tackle standard rotation? I'll give you the very short Cole's notes of it.
Let's go.
Yeah, if you want a longer rendition of this, obviously I cannot solve the problems and flesh out standard rotation in the 20 seconds that I'm allotted to explain this. But what I will say is that standard rotation would have a core set. It would have an evergreen set, a core set as it were, that would basically stay the same and be legal for all standard rotations, or any standard mode would always have the core set. That core set is basically whatever the core set would be right now. So you'll have your I'm trying to think of some of like the core cards, like your Geralts, your Ignis. You'll have those, but
much,
you'll also so those will always be true. So you'll have some of the basics of certain archetypes and whatever. Then you'll have whatever the last 2 years of cards that have come out are legal, and everything prior to that rotates out. And people will say, well, now you're having less cards. So how does that work? Well, in future sets, you can create future sets where, let's say, Detlaf Higher Vampire has been rotated out because it was in Crimson Curse. Then you can have, for instance, a reprint of Detlaf, or another version of Detlaf, a slightly different version that fits within whatever the standard mode is at that time. Because maybe Detlaf as a 5 body or a 6 body in a particular standard meta is too much. So maybe you come in with a lower one to fit into whatever that rotation is, and whatever the meta is, and whatever the balance situation is at that time. And some of the fleshed out cards, things like, Squirrel rotated out. How do we deal with banishing out of things? You reprint Squirrel. And people are like, so I have to buy the same card twice? No. If you have Squirrel from a previous rotation, it is legal in that rotation because the card title is the same. This is how it works in other card games. So you're not losing cards. You're merely playing in a format that has a tighter mechanic set, and as new cards are printed, which you can do, and people will say, well, if you have a standard rotation, then you got to print more cards more often. Yeah, you do, as other card games do, because that's what's needed. I understand right now if you're getting like 100 cards a year, that standard rotation is not a good idea, but that's not that. That's like, I'm saying that if you implement standard rotation, other things would also have to change, like the frequency of cards being printed. Because right now, getting however many cards it's June and we've had 25 cards?
No.
Yeah. No offense, but that's not good enough. So what you would have in a standard rotation situation is like 80 card drops every 3 months. And people would be like, oh, look, we finally got Endrega Larvae back. But now they're 5 provision and don't have armor. Why don't they have armor? Well, because we're playing in a meta now that doesn't necessarily have too much necessity for armor, because maybe this particular standard rotation isn't a very heavy control meta. Maybe it's more of a engine style meta or something, or whatnot. Again, it's a very broad stroke that I'm trying to explain this with, but I don't say standard rotation because it's a buzzword or it's an easy thing to throw at it. I don't pull it out there. I'm like, well, other card games do it, so clearly it's got to be good here. I put some thought into this, and I also have 23 or 24 years of CCG experience playing card games that have standard rotations and playing CCGs that do not have standard rotation. And I understand when it works and when it doesn't work. Much like I understand why draft mode right now doesn't work and why other ones do work. That's a whole other story. So that's
one thing to kind of say here. Some people like appreciate standard rotation, and some people don't, saying that they rotate cards, so we need to buy new cards which have the same effect, and it's just lazy design and stuff like that. No, I feel like it's just a cleansing of the game of things which kind of rotate out because they become kind of irrelevant at some point. Like, I think we are the only game that takes time to go back to stuff and readdress them, change the abilities on cards. While other CCGs, what they do is they just rotate that stuff out, create cards with new abilities or cards with similar abilities because they play an important key role in a given meta, and they bring them back. And I also love there are these comparisons that people do for Magic. Like, you have a card from 1993 versus a card that was done now, and kind of you see how the difference of a card that you can get for like 3 mana versus that was back in the day versus a 3 mana card now. Not only do you there was an example of an ogre I saw on Twitter yesterday. So you pay 3 mana, you get a 2/2 body with no ability. And then today's there is this really cool card in Kamigawa. There is some Kamigawa that came out. It's called Reflection of Kikijiki. And it's a 3 mana enchantment. When you play it, first it spawns a token, which is a 2/2 creature, and after that it gives you a second ability, because it's like one of these scenario cards that updates itself on every round until
A
it gets to,
saga.
it's like a saga, exactly, until it gets to the third one. And it shows you the power level of this card compared to the power level of a card that was designed X amount of years ago. Like, it shows you the growth of the game.
Yeah.
And I feel like also, if you look at Gwen, like some of the abilities that we have now coming out are much stronger compared to the older cards that we had before that maybe came out even before Crimson Curse or part of the base set, which people feel like are kind of becoming less relevant now. And for a developer, it's much easier just to rotate them out and create new stuff in their place, or just to have reprints, like you said, for these cards. So this is one thing that kind of makes sense for me when it comes to standard rotation.
Dominaria had that three mana saga for knights. It was white. It was like 2 white, 1 colorless, and like you play it, create a 2/2 knight token. And then on the second chapter, create a 2/2 knight token. And on the next chapter, all your knights got +1/+1 and vigilance. And you're like, okay, so I can get a 2/2 creature, or I can get two 2/2 creatures that become 3/3s for the same price. Like, that's power creep. And how do you address power creep, ladies and gentlemen? Rotation. We'll do a whole episode on rotation. The problem, Pavel Burza, is that I would gladly write up a proposal and a whole thing about what standard rotation should look like, what cards would come in, come out, what the meta would look like, how to adjust, etc. Do all this stuff if it mattered. But unfortunately, I honestly believe that if I put all that effort in, it would be to waste, because people would probably just not read it and not care and tell me I'm wrong without actually doing it. Like, I would do it. Unfortunately, my interest is waning on it, because like I don't know what else to say. Like, I'm not going to, I wish that there were more people that had a little bit of a more open mind to have a discussion about it. And I appreciate you reaching out, Amrak, about this, because I would love to do another episode and really just like a PowerPoint presentation, show you guys what it means. But what bothers me sometimes is people are like, nope, don't want to hear it, you're wrong. It's like, why am I wrong? Because it's stupid. Right. Why is it stupid? Yeah. Because you're wrong. I'm like, okay, well then we're done here. All right, let's keep going. We got a couple more here. This one's an easy one.
Is Uno a CCG by Chaos Reddit?
It is not. It is not a CCG. No. The CCG, one of the C's in CCG is collectible, and you are not collecting them. Much like, let me see, much like a deck of 52 is not a collectible card game. Yeah. Same as, I don't know if there's my Italian friends who play Scopa, but if you play Scopa, you have a deck of Italian playing cards with like the queen, the king, the stars on them, and all that stuff. That's not a collectible card game. It's you can play different games with it, but you're not like collecting and building and customizing. You have to play with those cards, otherwise. Yeah. So it's not a CCG. It's a fun game. Don't get me wrong.
I mean, you could be collecting different Uno decks based on some themes or collaborations or whatever. You also might be collecting some special, normal decks of cards because of specific arts and stuff like that. But they don't really make them. I think the point in CCG is actually you collecting different cards and different versions of cards, and that's what makes them unique. So yeah, I had the same. That was my first thought. It's like, is it collectible? Not really, because you're not collecting specific singles from it and putting them in a binder.
Basically, if you don't open a pack and feel that joy, it's different. Imagine it's like you open a pack, you're like, oh, I got the +4. Oh, it's foil. Like, that would be sick. Don't get me wrong, but anyway. Yeah, everyone plays from the same deck anyway, so that's also part of it. All right. Zayad Neo, does CDPR still intend for Gwent game to grow and expand further, or satisfied with the current state of release schedules of cards every year as a steady state? This is more of a question for you, obviously, but I'm going to give a one-sentence answer, which is any company that immediately stops any ambition for growth is doomed to shrivel and die. So in my opinion, and I don't have any inside information on this, I would be very concerned if CDPR said something like, no, we're cool with what it is, we don't want to grow anymore. Like, I think that's because you're constantly losing players. Like, every game sheds players. Like, it's just like freaking skin follicles. They just fall off. You just never know. So if you're not constantly with the mindset of growth, you're doomed.
Yeah, I think the question, it makes sense because you probably feel that there are less cards coming out this year, but I think it's one of those years that we took for us to kind of go back, revamp some of the stuff that we had. I know I've been saying this a lot, but that is the truth, and kind of let players catch up. And I feel like, yes, we want to grow, we want to expand further. We want to have more interesting cards, probably bigger drops also for players moving into the future. We want to do more journeys and stuff like that. So it's not something that we want to stop on doing or kind of limit, but we're pretty much also seeing like what are the possibilities. And also we need to be taken into account that, at the end of the day, it is always going to be moving forward kind of like a decision, like a financial decision. Is the game making enough money? That's one thing. Are there enough people and resources allocated to it to be working on it? And I feel like what we have been doing throughout the years is we've always been trying to do as many cool things for Gwent as possible. And I feel like the team is still there, is still working on it, still growing. So totally, we want to keep on keeping on and keep on, delivering really cool stuff. But yeah, this year we're kind of keeping things maybe a little bit slower when it comes to the number of things that we release and to the sheer quantity of the things that we release. But we want to be doing more cool stuff and bigger stuff moving into the future.
Last one, Mr. Pavel Burza. It's been a long episode, but feels good.
It's a good one. Yeah. This one's by Rechazado. I hope I didn't mix that up too much. Hope you're doing well. I have 2 questions. I'll try to keep them short. So Gwent has many ways to adjust cards besides provision/power, initiative, adrenaline, positioning, counters. Yet the balance team seems to prefer to play with the first ones when dealing with the problematic cards like Kaltulis or Foltest. Don't you think the other solutions can be more elegant or can increase the player agency? I won't be reading on the whole thing, but I feel like the balance team has kind of shown that provision and power is kind of there to balance the game. Provision was specifically added to Gwent because if you remember your Gwent history, it wasn't there back in the days, but it was added there for us to, quickly adjust things on the go when it comes to cards. And nerfing and buffing provision and power is like the easiest thing to do. But we've also seen that we are adding stuff like the amounts that cards damage by, the amounts that they boost by, adding or removing shield and kind of playing with that stuff. Or if a card we feel that like is obsolete and we can't really do much with it, we just change the ability all at once for that one. So I feel like we've been very flexible here, but I agree that provision and power is kind of there in order for you to balance out the cards and kind of tweak them on the go and see if these things are working or not, or if the card needs a bigger adjustment or change to it.
So when you say problematic cards like Kaltulis or Foltest, this is rhetorically asked because it's not like he's gonna jump in the podcast and be like, "What I meant was," I don't think is Kaltulis really a problematic card. Kaltulis has been around for several years.
People play it, but it's not
problematic. It's just a different way of playing, and if you're not if a player is not well equipped to deal with it because they're inexperienced with this particular type of game, like Kaltulis to me is the epitome of what a really cool card can be. It is the epitome of of unique design. I think that Kaltulis, if I were to show a player from another CCG some of the most unique and fun cards, or unique and archetypal style decks building sort of focal points like anchors for decks, I'm showing Kaltulis is on my short list of cards that I would show them to entice them to play the game. I'm like, here's a really cool card to show you. For instance, I would show them Kaltulis. I would probably show them something like Colgrim and say,
I was
look,
gonna say Colgrim.
Colgrim's great because
Yeah.
it's like if you have more or less cards than your opponent in your deck, you have an advantage, and that's
It's
important.
unique.
Yeah, it's definitely unique. I think Keltulis, full test. I understand full test because full test you drop the card and it'll boost at the end of the turn and get advantage. There's not much that you can do with it. But like when it comes to when you're talking about balancing these cards and you're saying, well, you're always touching power, provision, etc. Well, anything else that you really touch on a particular card is just a complete rework of the card, and that's another thing that I find too many people are horny for reworks because a particular card is not good in one particular time. Like the amount of reworks that would occur to cards that are now being used. Like what card is good today that was not good last year that people were probably saying, well, you got to rework it. Well, no, because if you rework everything, then you're still only seeing the same 10% of available cards, and people are going to still be clamoring and ringing the bell to fix the other 90. So,
dude, some cards that we have in the game, if you look at throughout Gwen's history, you could see that they had multiple different abilities throughout the years. I sometimes get myself kind of, in my mind kind of twisted because I look at a card, I think I know how am I going to play it, but I'm like, shit, that ability changed some time ago. I was like,
yeah.
what are you thinking about it? You forgot about that. Like, it happens, and I feel like it also just adds more confusion here to the players.
Dude, Seleno Harpy, I don't know how many times that card went through the ringer. Dude, that card has had more identity changes than Jason Bourne. It's insane. Like, it's crazy how many different times it's sort of like switched up who it was and what it did. But yeah, I have to pump the brakes on you here. Keltulis doesn't need a change. Keltulis is one of the crown jewels of Gwent cards, in my opinion, because it has a high skill set. It plays differently than every other deck, and it requires a different approach to the game. And you know what? You know how you beat it? You purify the defender and you heat wave it, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. So that's just me. There's ways to beat it, dude. There are absolutely ways to beat it. I just don't think I can kind of see why full test is annoying. A lot of these major impact cards like full test or whatever, in my opinion, a lot of these cards should be on turn start than on turn end because it gives your opponent an opportunity to deal with it. I think that is a reasonable approach to certain cards that do things, and that's kind of where we're at with that.
Yeah.
There was a second part to this question, which is the last question of the mailbag, and it is: are we ever going to have another 60-card drop? Look, I'm the first person to beat the drum and say that we need a lot more, not just a few more cards. Screw 60-card drops. Give me 80 to 100-card drops 3 times a year. And I understand, like, the logistics of it from CDPR's point of view, Pavel, you can talk to, obviously, better than I can. But sometimes I would imagine it's just unfeasible. But is it unfeasible due to manpower? Is it unfeasible due to the way that the current meta and balance is on, like, this fulcrum that you can't have it one way or another? Even the slight, like, if you add too many variables, like the equation won't balance, right? So like, what's the deal here?
That's a lot more cards. That's a lot more animations for cards. That's a lot more sounds for cards. That's a lot more people working on the game itself. So that is a lot of resources that would need to go straight into Gwent. And the question is if those resources pay out, like, in the end, right? So that's one thing you need to take into account. Like, so it's a matter of growing everything above 60 if we're talking about something that Flake just mentioned, so like 80 to 100. Those are big expansions, and they require a lot of hands on deck for it to happen. I kind of get, because in this question there was this thing that they like getting lost in the deck builder and having a lot of things going on, a lot of different cards dropping and trying to figure that out. I feel like, yeah, it makes sense and it's really cool, but it's very hard to also, like, to implement it. That's one thing, but also I feel like as a player coming in, you will be quickly overwhelmed. But I feel like as card game players, we kind of want to be overwhelmed by the sheer amount of cards, appearing in the game. But it's hard to say, like, what the future will bring. But hopefully, we get to do more bigger drops in the future.
I hope so too. I definitely hope so too. We are closing the mailbag, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, everybody, for submitting your questions and concerns. I know that
always.
Yeah, we can't get to everyone every week. But there are a lot that we get that, either we want to get into more detail about, or we just we just can't get to everything. But thank you for just, supporting the podcast and supporting just, us
having fun.
That's
and
what
talking
it is.
to each other.
Yeah, man.
And sharing the passion of card games overall.
That's
Gwent,
us.
but also stuff beyond Gwent.
Man, I hope I get to see you in person soon, dude, because
same.
We got to do a bike ride.
Big hugs. Eat lots of sweets and ponchki.
We're going to I know we said this last week, but we have to have a Flake and Burza do the punchki tour, the punchki powwow of 2022 or something like that. Would be so rad.
Tour the punchki.
Oh my god, yeah. Oh god. I don't know why.
10 out of 10. That would be amazing.
It would be amazing. We'll get Dominica to follow us and document our adventures. And every time she says something like, "Don't you think that's a little," we're like, "Shut up! This is fine. This is fine. This is how we live." It's gonna happen soon, hopefully. Yeah, I'm gonna end the show, Mr. Burza, on the same way I do every week and say I love you.
Love you too, man. Awesome episode. Love everybody watching and listening. Thank you for the support, as Flake said. And yeah, we will be back next week with more greatness in the Flurza experience, which is awesome.
It is awesome. If you guys have suggestions for topics you want us to cover on the show, please reach out at WatchFlake on Twitter for myself, at Pavel Burza on Twitter for Burza here. Yeah, all that stuff. And please subscribe, do all that other nonsense. Friends, don't forget you're not losing if you're learning. So keep playing the games. You might win. Burza, say the line.
So
say your famous line.
Bye.